Reports keep coming in from all over the globe confirming it as true. To say that the world is in a state of shock this morning would be to understate the situation. The event seems to have taken place at the same time all over the world just about 25 minutes ago. Suddenly and without warning, literally thousands, perhaps millions of people just disappeared.
Hey traders, welcome to Truth is Now Treason.
So we are in the middle of our Signs series. We are now on episode 6. To summarize what we've talked about already, so the saints have been removed from the earth in an event called the rapture. The 7-year tribulation has now begun. And the two main characters, or bad guys, are the Antichrist and his buddy, the false prophet. Now they have arisen to the global stage. They're appearing to be Israel's friend by initiating a peace agreement.
But 3.5 years later, they renege on that peace agreement and thus wage war on the Jews and Christians. The false prophet and the Antichrist think themselves so high and mighty that the false prophet creates an image for everyone to bow down in honor of the Antichrist, who thinks he is a god.
Now, for those of you who have just joined us, we've also been talking about current events that we are seeing happening not only in the whole world, but in our country that go along with what the Bible says is going to happen in the last days. So check out those previous episodes 3, 4, and 5, if you want to know what they are. But at this point, everybody is going to have this mark, or the mark of the beast, for commerce in order to survive.
And we want to talk more about this mark, but we need to first explain some interesting things that will happen at this point that we believe you need to know to help you identify this as the mark of the beast. This setting up of an image is called the abomination of desolation in the Bible. And for the longest time, I really didn't understand what this was. But I do believe now that I know it's important to understand what surrounds this specific event. Now, in the Bible, Matthew 24, Jesus is answering his disciples' question about what signs should they look for to know that his coming is close at hand. He says in verse 15, so when you see the abomination of desolation, that's spoken by prophet Daniel, which means it's mentioned in the book of Daniel as well, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains.
So an abomination is something that causes disgust or hatred, like Lennox's cooking.
That's why you eat so much of it, huh?
As I've said before, Wendy's. And a desolation, it's a state of complete emptiness or destruction.
Like your man cave?
It is the way I want and need it to be. Yeah. So Jesus warned that something or someone that people detested would stand in the holy place, meaning the temple someday. When that horror occurred, he says the residents of Judea, meaning the surrounding area, should seek cover without delay.
Stand in the holy place would indicate that there has to be some kind of temple built because it doesn't exist currently. We do believe, though, that it's going to be over in Israel.
Yeah, so at this half week or the 3.5-year point, 42 months, since he signed the peace agreement, he's going to stop the sacrifices and the offerings that are done in this temple, the Jewish ones most likely. And in their place will be the abomination of desolations, which is the false idol set up there giving honor to the Antichrist, not the true Christ. This is going to be blasphemy.
And at one place it says in Revelation 13, verse 15, the false prophet will breathe life into it. And this image will be able to talk. And we know what probably will be is some kind of artificial intelligence. That's what we're guessing, because remember last week when we talked about Yuval Noah Harari, he is a big advocate of artificial intelligence. And they're constantly talking about this. And we know what AI can actually do.
Yeah, so the location where this image will be set up. It says another place in the Bible it says will occur on the wing of the temple, which leads us to believe somehow that there's going to be a third temple built. Now, 2 have been built in the past, but they're both long ago destroyed. So there's going to be a third temple. And now, from what I last read, the plans for this future temple in Israel have already been drawn up.
And there is a strong push for this new house of prayer to be constructed, and they're just waiting for the right time. One thing, though, that would be required to actually have a third temple would be a red heifer, according to the Temple Institute, which is a group advocating for this construction of this third temple.
Yeah, and guess what? A little over 3 years ago, some red heifers were born and transported to Israel. Now, since then, we have learned that one of them has been disqualified, but there's still 4 that qualify.
And these pure heifers are tied to the coming of Christ, and is the first time any have been born in 2,000 years. I mean, that is truly amazing.
Listen to this clip. It's going to explain more about what we just told you.
Further, another prophecy was fulfilled with the arrival of red heifers. 5 special red heifers recently came to Israel from a ranch in Texas, causing a lot of excitement, especially for those who believe in a prophecy about building the third temple in Jerusalem. These heifers are crucial because if they stay entirely red and flawless, their ashes can be used to purify people according to Jewish law. This purification is super important for Kohanim priests to do their duties in a future temple. After arriving, the heifers went to Haifa for a quarantine of at least 7 days, following the rules of the Israel Veterinary Authority. Later, they'll be moved to 2 places in Israel, with one eventually open to the public. The heifers will be taken care of until they're 3 years old, and then, following Jewish law, they can be slaughtered for their ashes. A group called Boneh Israel, made up of Jews and Christians, played a big role in bringing these heifers to Israel. A Texas rancher, Byron Stinson, who works with the organization, raised these cattle. The heifers got a special welcome at Ben Gurion Airport, attended by Temple Institute officials and other important people. In the Bible, having a red heifer is super important. The ashes from a red heifer were needed to purify the Israelites, as mentioned in the book of Numbers, chapter 19. These ashes were used for purification rituals at the temple. Today, the appearance of a red heifer is seen by many as a sign that the construction of the third temple is coming, and some people believe that Christ might return.
This heifer has symbolism. Like Jesus Christ, it had to be perfect to be worthy of sacrifice. The heifer not only had to be without spot, so there's no blemish to it, and upon which never came a yoke, according to Numbers 19:2. Its hooves, horns, even its eyelashes had to be red. And if the horns or hooves were not perfectly red, they would have to be chopped off before the heifer was sacrificed.
When it says no yoke can come upon it, it means it can't be used for anything that's related to work. So like if one had ridden on the heifer, leaned on it even, hung on its tail even, crossed a river with its help, placed a rope on its back, or even put your clothes on it, it became invalid for this sacrifice in the temple. So these 4 red heifers that they have over in Israel now, they are being kept away from the rest of the herd. They are not being used for work, and they're following strict biblical guidelines for these heifers.
Even if there was 2 black or white hairs found on the heifer, that animal became invalid. The heifer's physical flawlessness, it was symbolic for the spiritual perfection that was required of Christ to atone for the sins of mankind. He had to be spiritually without spot or blemish.
As you heard in the audio, before the red heifers could ever be sacrificed, they had to be 3 years of age. And this year, 2024, was the year those heifers became of age to be sacrificed. They were thinking they were going to actually sacrifice them for the Passover this year. I don't know if that ever happened. But once they are sacrificed, their ashes can be kept for 100 years after.
So if we agree with biblical prophecy, which we here at Truth Is Now Treason do, then when that temple is built, they will have the necessary red heifer that will be sacrificed and its ashes available to perform the purification rituals to start the temple that Jewish law requires.
I just feel like shouting when I talk about this because this is very cool. We know God is real, but this just reemphasizes it even more. And if you are listening to this and you are not a believer, why aren't you? If he can bring about his word from over 2,000 years ago, think about what he can do for you personally. He wants to atone your sins so you can experience his purifying grace too. I mean, wow, God is so good.
The abomination of desolation, when the Antichrist will break his promise to Israel And the false prophet will instruct man to put a fake idol, giving allegiance to this Antichrist. This is where his animosity for the Jews and the tribulation saints will be evident to everybody. It says this, it being the Antichrist, was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. This is where everyone will be forced to take the mark of the beast, have it put on their hand or their forehead.
Tribulation converts whose allegiance is to God will refuse and be put to death. Now, know this will be short-lived, as we've already emphasized. It's only for 3.5 years. I know it might seem like an eternity if you're living through it, but this Antichrist will be on God's timetable.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that this is how you will know this is the mark of the beast. It doesn't happen before the abomination of desolations, it's not after. It happens at that time. But if you're listening and you're not a follower of Christ, we want to repeat this once again. I want you to hear this next verse. It says this, all inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world, Jesus Christ. Now notice it didn't say most or some or a few. It says all. All whose name is not in the book of life will worship this Antichrist. Meaning if you're not a follower of Christ, you will be deceived, or there will be a strong possibility that you're going to have the wool pulled over your eyes and you'll blindly follow and worship this false Christ.
The question I know might be on your mind is what will happen to these who worship the Antichrist, the people who accept this mark. We know about those who refuse. They're going to die physically, but they will live with Jesus eternally wherever he will be. They will never suffer again. But for those who do accept this mark, it says here in Revelation 14, starting with verse 9, anyone who worships the beast and his statue or who accepts his mark on the forehead or on the hand must drink the wine of God's anger, and they will be tormented with fire and burning sulfur. The smoke of their torment will rise forever and ever, and they will have no relief day or night, for they have worshipped the beast and his statue and have accepted the mark of his name.
You have sealed your doom if you do accept the mark of the beast. So no matter how hungry you get, no matter how cold you are, please do not take this mark, because if you do, your fate is sealed. You're going to have no relief day or night.
And what happens to the false prophet and the Antichrist? As we've mentioned before, they will be in that fire as well forever. It's not a pretty ending for them either. And I heard a pastor say that all of us will live forever, but just where will be our final destination is the question. Will you be with Jesus forever, or will you be with Satan forever? And we don't know how much time we have. It could be another 50 years. And some of us listening right now won't be alive on this earth when these things happen, possibly. I hope none of us are even here at all, that we all have been taken in the rapture, because it could be in just the next few years.
Remember, there's nothing that needs to transpire before the rapture happens, according to biblical scholars. So why not accept Christ now? It's free, and there's lots of benefits attached.
Why not, my fellow trader?